So, before we even get into the podcast interview, this is our opportunity to just ground and to center. So, I'm going to start us with what we call the realize, grounding invocation. And I invite you to just sit comfortably. If you want to close your eyes, you can. And this just allows us to arrive together. And then I'll ask if either of you have something that helps you ground. And if you want to offer that up, and you'll have an opportunity to do that. So, as we begin, I'm going to start by saying how grateful I am and how grateful we all are to be alive and seeking the truth that reveals itself through the eyes of these beautiful beholders today as we come together to express love and service and compassion in action. We feel everyone has something special to share in this world, and we are so grateful for Kaylyn and Teri to be with us today to share their stories and the sparks that inspired their actions in creating ripple effects, actualizing love in this world. So let us be inspired by their stories and light in us a lantern for a cause that matters deeply to us and to our world. Today, we value progress over perfection, and we know that we're guided and protected on this journey of service and love with our human family. And for the sake of our precious short lives, may we be leaders who care. May we be leaders who act mindfully for the greater good of generations to come. And may we listen intently without the need to fill space with sound and seek to understand rather than postulate how to interject. We value living from our hearts and allowing the ripple effects of goodness, inspiration, hope, and courage to flow from our words into the positive actions supporting our families, communities, and this world we've been gifted to occupy. So thank you, Kaylyn and Teri, for being here. Do either of you have something you would like to offer as a grounding? And Kaylyn, I'll start with you just because you're at the top of my screen.
No, that was excellent.
Okay, that works for you?
Yeah.
How about you, Teri?
I think we need to start every meeting with that. That was
I
lovely.
know. That actually is one of the first tools on our website in our online resource hub is we put our invocation out there because somebody else had mentioned that too. They're like, God, that's just really a great way to start. I feel so good. So, and I want to let you both know that when we go through this podcast interview, and again, we don't exactly know what we want to put out on the online resource hub, but if there's a tool that comes up, that will be one that we can actually reflect and put out there. So that gives us a chance to kind of give some tools to our listeners. So are you both ready?
Sure.
Okay, so this will be the official beginning of the podcast. So we welcome everyone to the Realize podcast. This is our podcast where we took a little bit of a compassionate pause. And I am so grateful and honored to have two very special guests here with us today. They are guests that I have had lined up for a while, and then we weren't able to make it happen during that pause, but we're able to make it happen now. And I think you all will love hearing from Kaylyn Lehmann and Teri Dahlbeck. So I'm going to start with some bios, and then we're going to move right into it. Kaylyn Lehmann is the co-founder of the company Simplified Coach, and Simplified Coach provides premier neuroscience-based leadership and communication coaching. For over a decade, she has coached hundreds of CEOs, VPs, and high potential executives, mostly in high tech, biotech, and highly funded startups. Kaylyn believes her clients hold the choices for their personal and professional growth, and she believes in their accountability for these choices. And I think we'll learn in the podcast interview that one of her favorite terms when she talks about clients is she loves working with bulldozers. And this is a term for people who are incredibly dedicated, committed, and so full of integrity that they are inadvertently stepping on people to try to reach their goals. Kaylyn also loves consciously connecting with others and contributing to the world. She's past that 50-year-old mark, and she has grown more passionate about play with each birthday. She enjoys skiing, canyoning, ziplining, and trying to perfect a perfect yoga pose. And she still feels like a kid. So welcome, Kaylyn Lehmann. Let me do the bio too for Teri, and then we'll move into the conversation.
I like
Teri,
Kaylyn's bio.
I know, isn't it such a good one? I'm like, wow, I love that. And we certainly will have these bios out on our podcast too, so everyone can hear more about the two of you. So Teri Dahlbeck is also co-founder of Simplified Coach, again, neuroscience-based company that really works with everything from executive coaching, executive team coaching, facilitating, and she has worked in startups and continues to work in so many different avenues. She's a certified leadership and communication coach and supports mostly C-level and director level leaders and teams. Teri works with fast-growing startups, mid-sized companies, and global corporations, and Teri combines her operational work experience with results-oriented coaching tools to facilitate clients in reaching their professional and personal goals. Teri is also the former CEO of CI Labs, which was an Apple and IBM joint venture. She's the founder and chairman of Got Marketing, which is an acquired global software firm, and the senior VP of product business development and marketing at Vicinity Corp, that was mapping technologies and then acquired by Microsoft. She began her career at Apple with positions like software engineer, C programmer, building briefing center manager, and a systems integration channel manager. Teri is known for her collaborative and accelerated style, working relentlessly and compassionately with her clients to achieve their goals simply and quickly. She also works with high-functioning spectrum clients and clients who have not had success in coaching. Clients expand their professional skills while developing a greater awareness of self and others in the service of more successful, purposeful, and a fulfilling life. So amazing bios, two of you. And I know the two of you because I also have been with Simplified Coach for the past, I think it's almost 10 years now, in the capacity of Chief Training Officer. And I have had a lot of different roles, but I love you two as women. I love you two as partners. I think that what you have created with Simplified Coach is incredible. And I don't think I'd stay around so long if I didn't really know and feel that, because you lead it with such heart. So I would love for this podcast to open up everything from what you believe in relative to your business, as well as what you believe in individually. So let's go ahead and begin. And Kaylyn, I'm going to go to you first. I'm just curious, when you think about your life, oftentimes when we start this podcast, we say, give us a Reader's Digest of the markers in your life that have helped frame you and who you are. Can you give us a little bit of that in terms of some key moments that maybe you remember?
The story that I usually tell is that I'm one of three daughters, and I was the less ambitious one. So there was a certain point when I was in college when my younger sister was becoming a nautical archaeologist and had been on 60 Minutes diving with Hugh Downs. My older sister was a Gulfstream jet pilot, and I would joke that I was the one that my family tapped to make the bows for the Christmas presents, because that was my skill. And it was around that time that I made that joke that my mom sent me a letter with Ralph Waldo Emerson's what does it mean to be successful poem, which was very much about, if one life has breathed better because you have lived, this is to have succeeded. And along with it, a note saying, stop belittling yourself and your contributions to the world. And I think that was a big permission slip to not fit into a certain mold, but instead go after what I felt passionate about.
That's beautiful. God, thank you so much for sharing that. There's so much to unpack with that, and I want to do that. I also want to go over to you, Teri, for this same question. When you think about your own life and maybe some key markers or moments that have helped frame you or your beliefs, what comes to mind for you?
When I started in executive coaching, there really wasn't a well-known job title or position. As a matter of fact, if I knew of it, I might have even wanted majored in it if I could get exposure to it. I always felt that I was somewhere between organizational development. I did not want to be an industrial psychologist. I just liked helping people my entire life. And I remember at one company, I got a couple of notes from people saying, you're doing so much to help the company and the people here. Like, we all feel really good. You should go home, quit helping us so much. And that was it was meant in a caring way. And what I took away from that is I might be in the wrong job. This is when I was a CEO, because I'm fiercely competitive, but I'm also fiercely competitive for people to reach their dreams or their passion or their purposeful life, my own included. And I think there was a small hole in my heart still trying to find where I fit in and what I needed to find inner peace. And so it became a, 2-decade intensive search and continuing practice. As any executive coach might tell you, they're going through coaching at the same time that they're coaching. It's a lot of what could I take away from this conversation as well.
That's incredible. And my question on that, and I'm going to kind of come on to that one and then come back to you, Kaylyn, is when you think about, I think in a recent conversation, you were saying that you've been learning more to go with the flow, Teri, versus leaning into resistance. And I'm curious if that still feels true for you, and what does that look like for you?
So I happen to be one of those people who didn't have the storybook perfect childhood. And I wanted to have that.
Mm-hmm.
And when you don't have that, at least in my experience, I'm sure it's part genetic, but there's a sense of being out of control during very formative years, and I wanted to be in control. So what I pretty much modeled my early career on was being in control of things. And what I found out was that there's something called the cosmic joke, which you might think you're in control, and you might be participating in your future, hopefully, yet there is so much out of your control. And so I took it on as a sort of a private adventure of going through life, participating fully. And if things didn't turn out the way I was planning, let's say Kaylyn and I were doing a sales pitch together, or I was hosting an event or something, that's okay. That the joke's on me. I'm not in control of the outcome. I'm only in control of my participation.
Mm-hmm.
So I like to let go. And sometimes, and I'll give you a little neuroscience tool here. Sometimes when you feel jacked up because, adrenaline is coursing through your body because something just happened, it's not the way it was supposed to happen, you are not in control in this situation. What can I do? What can't I do? But I'm realizing I'm not able to do anything. They found in neuroscience that if you smile, you squirt a little adrenaline into your body with a nice cup of endorphins, meaning you get like happy bugs all of a sudden. And it's the reverse. I always thought that you get happy and then you smile. It's not, it's the other way around. So I have a experience, and we did a worksheet. It's called How Exciting. So I was driving once and a mudslide happened right in front of me, and I thought my life could be over. And in that moment, I just smiled and said, well, how exciting. I'm going to die. I'm going to watch the boulder come right in on me. And I'm going to keep every ounce of that brain smartness, which is called glucose in your prefrontal cortex, in that head. I do not want it down, coursing through my body. And so, in fact, that nothing in my car worked. And all of a sudden I thought, why don't I just try the bright lights? Like nothing worked, lights, and the brights worked, which gave me just enough time to figure out how to get a little bit further. And then the whole mountain did come in behind me. Mm-hmm. So it's something that I practice. My clients tell me they love it. And of course, I don't say how exciting if there's a death of a loved one or something that's much more in depth, as well as might need pure grieving time. Mm-hmm. So we can give the How Exciting worksheet to your listeners if you would.
Thanks for that, Teri. So Kaylyn, when I hear the quote that your mom put in the note to you from Ralph Waldo Emerson, it also comes to mind how much you can recite the Theodore Roosevelt daring greatly like quote. And I love that about you. Tell me tell us a little bit about how Simplified Coach got founded, because I think that's a cool story. And also what continues to drive you as inspiration, as these poems certainly have been a part of that.
Sure. So how we got founded, Teri probably has a different version of that story than I do, because it certainly affected her differently, as any of these things do. But we had met, we were doing a project for Yahoo on leadership, and we were together working for a different company, teaching from the front of the room. So we had already met, liked each other, respected each other, but had different businesses. So I had my own business and she had hers. Then I was pregnant with my second, and had a 12-month-old at home when I was forced on bed rest, and eventually bed rest in the hospital. So I spent 4 weeks in the hospital on bed rest before I had my second child. And during that time, I got fairly depressed that I was bedbound and couldn't play with my kid or work or bring in income for my family. And then, of course, there was all the terrifying stuff about the pregnancy. But in the midst of all of it, I was feeling sorry for myself. And then I went into my tools, one of them being the tool of reframing and asking yourself, what am I not seeing that I could see that would change my experience right now? And when I asked myself that question, I realized that I had time on my hands that I probably would not have for many years after having my second child. And during that time, I could finally choose to build a more local business versus the one where I traveled all the time. And I reached out to Teri at that moment and said, hey, want to join forces? Because I knew she was a sales and marketing genius and had a vast array of experience. So I asked her to be my business partner at that time so that I could make the most of that bed rest time and then come out of it having had a really good experience instead of one.
Yeah.
Of course, she said no. That's a different story.
We'll talk a little bit about that. But it's tricky, I would imagine, to have a co-founder, and the two of you have made, and maybe there's something behind the scenes that I don't know, but you seem to have made it work. And I'm curious, what is it from your perspective, Kaylyn, about why it works so well as two founders that are both very successful and very competitive individuals in their own right? What makes it work for you?
That we trust each other is probably number one, which was set up with some intentionality, especially from Teri's part. She had been down this road before and had business partners before. I'll let her tell that story, but she pretty early on, along with me, but with her urging, created our agreements and our house rules and how we were going to run the business and treat each other. And then pretty quickly that grew into a friendship where, yes, we're business partners, but we would dissolve the company in a heartbeat if it threatened our friendship because, or our family ship. I mean, we're friends that are family. So that matters more to us than the business. And that is how we built the whole business. I'm in service to Teri. That is the idea. Running your own business is hard. I tell everyone that. It's super annoying. I was working on taxes for a little while today. It's annoying, but if you're going to have your own business, you might as well love your life. And so my job is to make sure Teri can do all the things she loves. And that's how she treats me as well. And awesome. By the way, Christina, you're one of those too.
Thank you. I mean, it's awesome. So Teri, I'm curious, what about the founder story would you say is your twist on it? And also what do you think works as a co-founder with Kaylyn?
You know, there's something called a positivity bias and a negativity bias. And I think that's one of the reasons Kaylyn and I work so well. I have the negativity bias. I look at something and I would say I credit my childhood for this, of what's going to go wrong here and what do I need to be worried about? I had a company earlier in my career with a partner, and we were supposed to be thick as thieves and arm in arm and running the company together. And at the end, it did not happen that way. I did not feel that I had an alignment. I did not feel I had a solid relationship. I felt quite blindsided by a few moves and thought to myself, I will never be in a partnership again. And so when Kaylyn asked me, I said no, but it wasn't about Kaylyn, it was about my damage. And I had to reflect on that and say, am I willing, you know, similar to marriages, I'm sure, to trust again and trust a partner, because being in business is so hard. So for me, I'm like, you know, that Disney character cartoon called Chip and Dale, where they're super two polite chipmunks. Oh, no, after you. No, after you. I mean, Kaylyn and I are like that. Like, am I working hard enough for the business, Kaylyn? And she's like, yes. I'm like, are your dreams being met? Yeah. Like, is there anything I could do differently? She's no. And then she'd come back at me with the same thing. So I think it's about a commitment, and as in marriages, you never know if something is going to change. So that was just really scary. It just hurt. I was so hurt by I was, you know, hurting myself is the real answer, that I needed some recovery time. So I think Kaylyn and I have this crazy amount of trust, crazy amount of responsibility for each other, with regards to the business, as well as, when she had her first baby, I mean, I could not eat those children up enough. And, I was hold them when they were little guys. I would say, I don't want to drop you. And I'd hold them in my arm and pretend that I would almost drop them and catch them, and they'd squeal in delight. And, now they're young ladies, practically. And she's my family and my friend and my colleague. And if we have an issue, we talk about it. And that's what communication coaches should be doing, is using their own tools.
Mm-hmm.
And I will add that my daughters are 14 and 15 now, and they babysit often. And my 14-year-old, the other day when she was with the baby, I saw her grab the baby and say, "I don't want to drop you," and act like she was dropping her, and the baby laughed and laughed and laughed. So it continues on.
I love that. The full circle moments, right? The teachings that we don't even think they're absorbing. It's so cool. So Kaylyn, I also know that you, you handle a lot relative to running a business, and like you said, you've got 2 teenage, very busy and active girls. Your husband too, he's dealt with some health challenges over the years. So part of learning and growing is all about rebounding from breakdowns and working with intentionality and all of that. Can you share with us how you keep positive? How do you keep that objective presence? What works for you?
So back to the positivity bias that Teri said I had. We were literally at an event once when somebody hit stainless steel tongs against a stainless steel bowl, so it sounded like a bell ringing. And I immediately raised my hand as if to give a toast. And Teri went into a boxing stance. So our positivity and negativity bias in action. I think that I do use my tools, like the reframing technique that you said before. No one's positive all the time, and no one gets out of life unscathed. So certainly a reframing tool, but you continue to add more and more tools to your toolbox as different things are thrown at you in life. Some of the ones that I use and that I share with clients, one of them is definitely about a moment in time, understanding that time passes and it changes things. No matter what you're going through, it will not remain the same. And if you look at anything around the history of the world, the history of life on earth, all of those things, we are a speck. This life and our presence is nothing. And so putting it into those kinds of frames where you see this moment in time that's very difficult will not last forever, and being able to understand that so that you have some perspective on it. The other one that I love to do with clients and for myself also is removing yourself from the situation. So there's different ways to do this. You could be watching a movie of what's happening. Instead of it happening to you, you're just watching the movie and you're giving the character advice on what they should do next. I read today, Headspace wrote about this, the idea that your emotions are like a storm that's outside, and you can always go inside where it's warm and cozy and just watch the emotions from being inside. So there's a lot of reframing that I tend to do in different ways to allow me to stay objective and keep things in perspective. Yeah. By the way, that doesn't mean it happens all the time, right? Like we all have an emotional reaction. Like I said, in the hospital, I went to the pity first and the, oh, poor me thing. But once you are in that reaction, knowing that there's a handful of things that you can grab and that can pull you through. And by the way, the other thing around that is having people like you two that you can call and say, hey, talk me down or give me some perspective, because you're not always able to do it for yourself.
Yeah. Isn't that so true? Like we can be going through the shitstorm. And I think that's a really important takeaway is, when you are around people that you think no shit happens to them and they have their stuff together, that's oftentimes not the case. There's often really big things that are happening. I mean, I don't know if you're open to sharing about your husband and the health challenges that he has had and continues to have, and what that personal impact is on you.
Yeah, sure, certainly. I mean, he's a very physically strong guy that was an Army Ranger and worked for the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office until he retired a few years ago, and now he owns and runs his own business. But with the Sheriff's Office, he did marijuana eradication. He led the SWAT team. He was on the SWAT team. So he's had a very physical career. And in 2010, he started getting numb and tingly hands and feet. And it started to move up his body, this numbness and tingling. And we were trying to see doctors and trying to find out what was going on. But he also couldn't, he felt like an elephant was sitting on his chest, is the way he'd describe it. Like he couldn't take a big, deep breath. We thought it was multiple sclerosis for a little while. That's a symptom of multiple sclerosis usually. But eventually, over the course of about 6 months, they finally found out the diagnosis, which is chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy. And it's a constant thing that his body is trying to attack the myelin on his peripheral nerves. And there's a very physical manifestation of that. And it was incredibly hard. We had little babies at the time. His older daughter, my stepdaughter, was in a very rebellious teenager phase at the time. And it took a long time to get a diagnosis. It drastically changed some aspects of his career. And I think it changed his identity to a large degree, because his whole identity had been the pain is weakness leaving the body mentality.
Yeah.
And that's not what an autoimmune illness is. So it was something that I credit him with handling with incredible amounts of grace and strength, because he does not let it stop him, and he does not stop. But for all of us, it was a huge adjustment. And it was a huge adjustment for about 3 years and Teri was my partner at the time. And she will tell you, we had the business then. He was in the hospital a ton during those first 3 years while we were trying to figure it out. And she was covering for me. And I was going to teach for large classes of people even while he was in the hospital. It was just a brutally difficult time. And then we got him to a place where he still has to go to the hospital sometimes, but we know what we're dealing with now. It's more stable than it used to be. And we know what to expect in a different way. I don't know what will happen long-term, neither does he. Yeah. We are still hopeful that they will come across new and better technologies for his illness.
Thank you for sharing. It just reminds me of one of our prior podcast interviews with Teresa Babick, and she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Basically, as soon as she got pregnant, and she's around, and he's now 15. He's our son's friend, and that has framed or reframed how she looks at life and I think you mentioned it, like we're a speck, or what a small little bit of time we have here. So what are we doing with our moments? That becomes really important.
And what can we not control? Back to what Teri was talking about too. There's so much we can't control about it.
Yeah.
Control our reaction.
So true. And Teri, I'm curious, you work with both of you work with a lot of executives in the coaching realm. I know, even though a Simplified Coach, we had to pivot the business because facilitation went to zero, right? So coaching really continued to increase. COVID hit hard. It hit a lot of people hard. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about some themes that you're seeing through coaching clients, or what businesses are facing right now around how in the heck, what's going on, and how do we navigate these bumpy roads?
Yeah. And can I comment on the last conversation to say that when you have a really good partnership, it's so much about being respectful. And Kaylyn was going through a lot. I remember she called me once in the middle of the night and said, do you want me to, is this good that I'm calling you now? Or would you have rather I waited till 6 a.m. when you have to leave at 6:30 to go cover me for a big workshop at Twitter? This was like 10 years ago. And I was like, no, thank you. I will take that and I will start studying. And because we both taught it, but when you're in the middle of the night, you don't know you're going to be driving to the city, which for us is like an hour and a half drive. It's really nice to know that to be in any kind of a relationship where you truly feel like you have each other's back. Mm-hmm. Now, when COVID hit, I usually have like 44 clients, and I went up to 90 something because I've been doing this job for 20 years, and people were calling me going, do I let people work from home? And then BLM occurred, and it's like, what do I say in my all hands speech? Or hey, can you help me with we have people in the company that want to do different political stances. How do I handle that? Because I don't want to be a political company. I want it to be everything is yes company, and you do that on your own time, not during the company. So there are all these different CEOs wanting to unpack and figure out issues. And then stress and, kids at home. And I have some great stories of Zoom calls, with what I got to see in the background when the person didn't know what was going on behind them. And I will tell you that now that we are all vaxxed, or, whatever your choice is, it seems like we're in a new place. And here's what I really want to say, Christina, is we tend to open conversations with how divided the country is, or how split we are on decisions. And I like to open the conversation with the topic of hope. And when I take a coaching client through, okay, good, you vented and you're stressed. What about the hope? What hope are you seeing out there? And people really are kind, and people really are helpful. And sometimes I just don't ask for help. I'm so busy complaining over here. So I'm finding a theme of, and I truly am, I'm tired of the negativity. I want the positivity of hope, and I want to figure out my own life, and I want tools and resources, and I need to learn how to ask for help, or I need to be vulnerable and say, I'm not comfortable here, or I need to be in a different position, or whatever the story is. So I'm finding more vulnerability, more hope is coming now. And I have a lot of hope for that.
For the woman who's the negativity bias part of this partnership, isn't that fun and exciting? I'm curious, you mentioned in a call recently that there was a new tool that you were coming up with, and it was almost like speaking in the other person's language on the negativity bias so that they can hear you and see you, and then being able to migrate it to hope. Can you remember what that tool was?
Well, there's a few of them that are entwined in there, so I don't know if I know the exact name of which one it was. What I can say is, I coach, as Kaylyn mentioned, she coaches a lot of bulldozers, high integrity, high intentions. They're good, just kind of get in their own way and don't realize the shrapnel that might be happening around them. I like all clients, first of all, and I coach the partners and the kids and the parents and the siblings and the friends of clients as well. But you're not going to connect. I tend to get people who've already had a coach before and it hasn't worked, or they're really crabby, or, they are just whipping the backs of the people inside the company, and all smiles and glory to the clients. And it's just not a sustainable environment. But they keep closing sales, so the board doesn't want to get rid of them, let's say, and they're successful, but it's kind of last chance. So a tool I had to use first was around bending our style. So one of the workshops we teach is around how you can bend your style. And so it's listening to how this person is speaking, listening to how they're emoting, and then meet them there first. So I've walked into a room swearing like a sailor, insulting the client, everything that I've watched them do to other people. And the theory, I don't like doing this, believe me, but I'm doing it out of kindness and love and support and a gamble, that if they can see that I can handle them, like, oh yeah, you can dish that out, so can I, or whatever, wherever they are, mirroring their tone. And then slowly they'll relax and go, okay, she's safe. If she can handle me, she can handle what I'm about to say, which I've had unbelievable turnarounds of, CEOs who didn't want to be a CEO. They wanted to run an orphanage, and that's a true story, or just people who are like, I don't want to work this hard. I want to work-life balance. So we've got a lot of that happening, but, nobody can get to them unless they bent their style first. So, yeah, so
That's awesome. I love the
She's
mirroring.
great with the hard to reach, is what we like to call them.
Say that again, Kaylyn.
She's good with the hard to reach clients.
Yeah, I love that.
They're not necessarily raising their hand going, ooh, I can't wait to develop myself.
Yeah, usually somebody else has said, by the way, you need coaching. And then maybe they feel safe with Teri. So they're like, okay.
Yeah.
And
I'm
then
in the principal's office.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. And now, Kaylyn, the other thing that I really want to kind of talk about for a moment is I've heard you say, we live the values we teach at Simplified Coach. We live the values we teach. And I'm curious what thoughts you have around building either a business or a life that is aligned with values. What does that feel like for you, especially given, as Teri mentioned, some of the divisiveness that sometimes we feel in this country and right now in this world?
Teri probably has a take on this as well. But when we joined together, we were working for another company, as I said. We were at Yahoo, but that's not who we were working for. We were working for a different company. And during that period of time, we were teaching leadership classes, and a lot of the points of that class surrounded communication. As a leader, how should you communicate? How should you give feedback? How to be candid but kind, all of those types of things. And yet what we found was the company we were working for was not being candid and kind. They were not giving us the feedback that they had, and were trying to give us feedback in a really watered down way that you could not be actionable about. And in the process of doing that, I realized how much it rubbed me. And we both ended up not working for that company. And when we joined forces, once I finally got her to say yes, and we joined forces, that was one of the big things that we said to each other is we've got to live the values that we teach. And what that really means is setting up an organization where our values are on our website. We share them with people all the time. We are clear about them when we bring people on as partners with us and clients, and we give them all permission to hold us accountable to those values. So we are pretty good at holding ourselves accountable to them. If we need to have a candid conversation, we're going to follow all the tools that we know via neuroscience or different communication techniques that will work. And also, if we slip up, we're going to help each other and go, hey, remember, right? We're going to live these values. So feedback follows the feedback forms that we teach and that we talk about. Accountability, that's a class we teach. So guess what? We're going to be above the line, finding where our power is. And I think that when you can do that, when you have the choice to do that, not everyone does. That is a beautiful thing about having your own business, is we don't get into these values clashes because we're very clear on it that you would get to sometimes when you're in a job where you have conflicting values. But because of that, it's pretty easy for us to also take those values back to our lives one way or the other. And Teri and I are pretty clear on where those values lie too. We want balance. She is a wedding singer in her spare time. I mean, she's in all these bands. I want her to have that. That's joyful. Just like she wants me to perfect my yoga pose or go on a ski day. And then we both have kids. Her son may be grown, but he's just as important in her life. And we're going to sometimes put those kids first, just like you are. Your service, Christina, the fact that you go on these service trips is something that we love about you. And for you to compromise that value, then what are you bringing to work if you had to compromise that value? People bring their best selves to work when their values are aligned with that work.
Can I add to that, Christina, that Kaylyn and I co-taught a class meeting. There was two of us at the front of the room. And one of the instructions when we were clarifying was, can we just chat, tell stories? Oh yeah, stories are good to incorporate into the curriculum. It was a 2-day curriculum. And I got a phone call one morning because Kaylyn and I we were going to a meeting at our bosses, who put us in that client. And I had my phone off, and I saw that I had like 19 missed calls in an hour from when I had it on. And bottom line is I was getting fired. And when they said, don't come into the all hands today because you're fired. And I said, wow, what am I fired for? Well, they want a talking head at the front of the room. Okay. Well, we talked about stories and you were okay with that. And right after that, Kaylyn called me. She goes, I'm quitting. And I was like, whoa, no. I mean, this is the character of Kaylyn. I mean, she's so deep in integrity and authenticity to say that wasn't right, what just happened. And if you armchair quarterback it, the story I tell myself now is this is a client who didn't want to lose his client. And so he would say anything and no, yep, she's gone, which is completely his right. And he should manage the company in a way that makes him feel safe. So I didn't have any, bitterness. I just didn't want Kaylyn to lose income or do something, valiant for me. So that definitely fed into the let's be partners energy. And we have our values posted on our website, which is empowerment, excellence, and enjoyment. So we want to empower our team, our clients, any stakeholders that we have. We want to serve excellence and always work on being better, but we also want to enjoy life. It's a blip. And what does that mean to you? And let me support you. We have some coaches that work for us that only want first-time manager clients. We have one that likes angry, really, really angry clients. So it's just different different. What we have one that loves women who are having a hard time finding their voice. So what I can say is one of the reasons our company is flourishing and is because we're attracting the people that want those same values. And Christina, you are 100% part of the reason why Simplified Coach is successful. For over 10 years, you shared these same values of wanting to empower people and maybe taking that call on a weekend when someone was melting and whatever it was that showed that we care, but we're also kind of badass and what are your goals? Because we want, we're not wasting time here. This is not, you're just going to come and talk. We're going to share our tools and get you to where you want to be. So I think it's the theory of the company, the theme of the company is one that's quite caring and empowering and searching for us.
And what I find is, oftentimes it's said that, your work or shouldn't feel like family. And I've kind of always kind of thought about that. And I thought, well, I understand, like there's a professionalism to it, and there's all goals and we need to understand how to meet those. But I've always felt like it has been like family. And I thought, God, what's wrong with that? And I think it's just come because of the foundation of trust and open communication, and that there is this deep having each other's backs. And if that's what a family professionally can feel like and look like, I think there's a lot of value to it. I'm curious, Kaylyn, would you echo in anything from your perspective?
No, I think you guys said it beautifully. And yes, it is what we want, and it's what we've been able to create. And one of the reasons we've been able to create it is not just that we live those values, but we also have been intentional about who we brought into the business, like you. And all of those people have referred the next group of people that come into the business. And so like attracts like. That's how we tend to look at it.
That's awesome.
Well, and I would add that, we have 100 coaches and trainers around the world that we would leverage based on what, gig comes up. And I would say kind of tongue in cheek that we're not a family because of everyone in our back office, everyone managing. Nobody's crazy in our family. So
it's not a dysfunctional family. Let's put it that way.
No,
because I think a lot of us have come from dysfunctional families and we want to do it differently.
So I see us as a team and family, friends who are something, but I think it's important to underscore, you can't pick your family, and sometimes that's part of the journey.
I love that. Well, I know because I've been working with you, Kaylyn, to do a big marketing rebranding and a relook. And so as we look at the tail end of this podcast, I'm curious, what do you see as either the future of Simplified Coach, or how our listeners can even best support you and what's going on right now?
I think the future of Simplified Coach is not that different than the past, in that we really thrive when we can be flexible in meeting people where they are and working with them to achieve their hopes and dreams. And that does not just look like professional success. That looks like fulfillment. That looks like alignment between life and work and all of those things. Mm-hmm. So we are brought in many times for one coaching client, and we will do everything in our power to help that client reach their goals. But we're also brought in to do several different things. And when one of our first big clients early on that Teri and I worked with, it was a pharmaceutical company. And we were in every layer of that organization, working with them as they were trying to launch their first product and get it approved by the FDA. We were with the individual contributors. We were with the executive team, all of those things. And when they finally got acquired for almost $1 billion, we were able to not take any money in that, but enjoy it and celebrate for them. And it was incredibly fulfilling for us to be able to be on that journey with that organization. Over the last few years prior to COVID, we grew so much, we couldn't do as much of that. So a lot of times we were dividing and conquering, as we called it. It feels now where we're more back to that, where we can really deeply engage with clients and sometimes smaller clients and make a real difference.
That's awesome. Teri, I'm interested in your perspective before we end with some collective questions. Either how can listeners support you or Simplified Coach, or just anything that is on your mind or heart right now when you think about what does the future hold?
Well, I would say if people are feeling they need something, they need a facilitator to share some tools, that's what we provide. Or if they know somebody that might just need to get unstuck, or might need just a little shove in the right direction, or maybe just a little bit of moral support, whatever it is. We're really kind and loving people that want that, but also, we have a bunch of workshops that are public and also in the companies that people can participate in, and they're very reasonably priced because that's how we operate. Kaylyn and I do a lot of pro bono work and highly discounted work.
Mhm.
So I think it's more, we're all in this journey together. There's something about humanity with us and the world right now that we want to be the spreaders of hope and resolution, and also to realize that life is happening. I mean, when Kaylyn's husband was sick and I was all stressed out that I wasn't going to do a good job at some big presentation I had, and then I went to the hospital right after the presentation, and there he is with, an IV or whatever, he had something in his carotid artery. And I was like, good Lord, this is my, let's get,
Perspective.
back into, I've lost 2 parents in the last 6 months. And Kaylyn has covered me on that. It's more about realizing we're all humans. We all have challenges. We all have insecurities.
Mhm.
I do this job, and I have done this job for 20 years. And I'm telling you, I have never met a single person who didn't tell me, I am so nervous or so insecure, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy, or I have imposter syndrome. There isn't the guy out there, unless they're a straight up sociopath, that thinks that, there isn't something they need to work on in a safe place. We also look for suggestions from your listeners if they have ideas of, hey, I would like to see a class on this, or what could I read, or what could I do to follow? We're open to that. So
I love that.
let's get
And
through this journey together with kindness and
and
humanity
absolutely.
and
And we'll
kick
put
ass.
all of the links to simplifiedcoach.com on the show notes and everything, so people can find the website. And we're also, I would just kind of add, an approved vendor at a lot of the major tech companies, Meta, Apple, Google. We've been in there coaching and doing a lot of different work. So that's kind of nice that toll gate, if you will, has already been passed. And so we're
Yeah.
out there.
And the startups, right? All the VCs around the world, and the many in Silicon Valley, where you have fast growth, and that's really hard to do. And first time managers, and in a time where all of a sudden people are tightening their belts. How do I do, more with less?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, ladies. I'm going to end this with what we do with our podcast. We call these the collective questions, and it's just meant to be like lightning speed, first thing that comes to your mind. And so, Kaylyn, I'm going to start with you for the first question. What are you currently reading or watching?
Ooh. I am reading a book called The Family Upstairs. It's a thriller by Lisa Jewell, I believe.
Mhm.
And I don't always read thrillers, but so far I'm in.
Awesome. How about you, Teri? What are you currently reading or watching?
Of course you asked me that, and I want to go run in the other room and look at what I have. You know what I'm going to say? I'm going to answer this really dorky, or dorkily, if that's the word, which is, I'll go with what I'm watching. So what I found is, I don't want to see the news anymore before I go to bed, or I don't want any negativity. I want to be super positive, even though I'm a negativity biased person, meaning I want to read the contracts. I'm more like negativity in terms of hang on, I'm highly protective of the success of Simplified Coach, and I know how there are some shysters out there. So I like to watch fun videos that you'll see, reels or YouTube, on everything from animals and kindness, and just something goofy or funny. Comedians. I'm totally addicted to Smartless and Fly on the Wall podcast for some fun relief. It's mostly just about having some joy before you get up, and right when you get up, and before you go to bed, to set the day and in the intentions.
That's awesome. Yeah, I just was listening to some of the Joe Coy comedy specials on Netflix, and I don't think I've laughed that hard in a very long time, and it just feels good to laugh. So good.
Absolutely. I love that.
That's cool. So, Teri, I'm going to start with you on the next one. If you could eat dinner and engage in dialogue with anyone, past or present, who would it be and why?
Jesus.
Why is that? It could be an interesting dinner.
I want to ask him to come back down and have a little conversation with a few people about what he actually meant in the Bible.
I love that.
And I mean
Yeah.
that non-religiously, I mean that more
Yeah.
from a, humanitarian standpoint of some
Yeah.
of the things that, I have witnessed and have clients who have been just horribly treated by parents who I have a cousin who my aunt disowned that came out transgender and he committed suicide. So I just think there's so much unacceptance that I want more acceptance. So that I would make it a brainstorming session where I'm coaching Jesus on to get out there and let's get this over.
And what did you really mean in walking this life? And I think there would be
Yes.
some setting of straight values back to that conversation. How about you, Kaylyn? If you could eat dinner and engage in dialogue with anyone past or present, who would it be and why?
Winston Churchill probably comes to mind.
Yeah.
I was I'm fascinated with the way that World War II impacted all the different various countries that it happened in, and grew up like most of us studying your own country. Like, how did it affect America, right? Pearl Harbor, and then we sent troops over and it lasted a long time and we had rations. But when you look at the history of London specifically, they were bombed every day for over a year.
Mhm.
And had no hope of winning for a long time. People were trying to get them to just give up, give in. And yet there was this intestinal fortitude coming from Winston Churchill that kept everyone going, no, we will continue to stand up, even if we lose everything. And it changed the course of the world,
Yeah.
his ability to do that.
Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you for the history lesson too, for those that may not know that about Winston Churchill. So cool. So I'm going to end with you, Kaylyn, and then we'll go to you, Teri. What are you most grateful for today?
That's me.
You, Kaylyn, you go
I'm so
first.
grateful for everything. I'm grateful for you, Christina and Teri, because you're incredible. And you've allowed me to live this life that is the life of my dreams, literally. And I am grateful for all the what ifs, the future, and what is yet to unfold.
Awesome. Thank you. How about you, Teri? What are you grateful for
Well,
today?
of course, I'm going to echo that because I feel the same about Kaylyn and you. And I mean that I am grateful for gratitude. I'm grateful that we have a channel to express gratitude because I believe that if you're holding any hate, or I'll speak for myself, I'm holding any hate or anger at my past or even my present, that's just killing me. And I want to start every day for the focus of gratitude, which is perfect that you ended it on this, because this is, whenever you're in doubt, just think of something that, or someone or someplace that you are grateful for. And it's always, for me, family, friends, nature, and awesome people that I meet in the elevator. Everyone represents God, and so do I, in the sense of let's be kind, and let's go back to that hope word again, and let's start breeding a new energy into our conversations instead of what's wrong with the planet. Let's talk about what's right.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, I am super grateful for the two of you for giving up time and energy and so much of your passion and your heart. I think our listeners will be super grateful also just to hear a little bit more about your story, both personally and professionally. And I just feel very, very lucky and honored to be working with the two of you. So thank you. And that is really what Realize is all about. It's the ripple effects, actualizing love. It's the people that are out there doing positive ripple effects that are having a huge impact on others. And so I see the two of you as not just drops in the pond, but very large waves. And so really built on positivity and caring. So thank you.
Thank you for your service of
you.
the podcast. We appreciate you.
Absolutely.